3, 2, 1. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to DragonCon Goes Virtual, our pre-DragonCon quarantine panels for the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. And tonight, we're doing a panel that has been much requested by all of us.
Yes.
Since last year, we said we have got to do this, and now here it is. We are going to talk about a fun thing that happens with sci-fi movies, novelizations. We're going to talk about those, and we have an assortment of lovely people to talk about such things, and then we're also, for funsies, we're also going to read lovely selections from some of our favorite, or maybe not as favorite, not so favorite novelizations. So let's go around the horn and introduce everybody. My co-director, Mr. Gary Mitchell, one internet away from me.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. I have written nothing, but I have read a lot.
And
to my right, or my stage left, my stage right, maybe. Over there. This guy.
Who, me?
There it is.
Oh,
Yes.
hi. Hi, I'm Keith DeCandido. I have written a bunch of novelizations, starting in 1998 with Gargantua, which was a Fox TV movie that aired on the Fox Tuesday Night Movie. It starred Adam Baldwin as a marine biologist, which tells you everything you need to know about it right there.
As long as the check cleared.
I novelized 3 Buffy the Vampire Slayer episodes in the Xander years in 1999. I novelized a horror movie that nobody remembers existed called Darkness Falls in early 2003.
I remember that movie.
Okay, that everybody but Gary has forgotten. It starred Emma Caulfield from Buffy, which is, I think, why they asked me to do it. I novelized, let me do this properly, the first 3 Resident Evil movies.
Cool.
One of which was actually one of my best novelizing experiences ever. I novelized Serenity, which is some obscure movie written and directed by some guy you've never heard of. I also have novelized 2 games, one of which never actually existed, StarCraft Ghost Nova, which this is actually a prequel to the game technically, and then I also novelized Alien Isolation last year.
Yes.
So I think that's everything. Oh, and I've also written 2 movie novelizations that never actually got published, which I'll gladly tell the panel about after everybody's introduced themselves.
So you're saying you have some experience?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. So
I've dabbled.
1, 2, 3 internets away from me, Mr. Michael Bailey.
Yeah, I'm Michael Bailey. I'm a podcaster. I have to follow that by saying that I have not written any novelizations. I have in my head an epic novelization of the 2-part Incredible Hulk episode, the first, where we really delve into the history of Dr. Clive. But I haven't written that. I just talk about comics and stuff on the internet and stuff. So but my introduction is I took the bullet for everybody else on this panel, and I just want to make that clear.
We will see.
1, 2, 3, 4, right directly south of Michael, Mr. John Hudgens. How are you, sir?
Well, pretty good. As with most of everybody else, I have not written any novelizations, although I have worked on quite a few licensed properties, including Star Wars, Babylon 5, and Crimson Skies, which did have a couple of novelizations and stuff like that based on it, but I have not written anything. I'm more behind the scenes.
You're somewhere in there.
Yes.
Yeah, you're in there somewhere.
Hey, anybody want to novelize my documentaries?
Yeah.
Keith,
Sure.
what are your rates?
Yeah.
And 1 internet to the west. West. I'm going to say west. I don't know. Miss Sue Kisenwether, how are you, ma'am?
Oh, just about as well as can be expected. The only thing that I have really written are articles on fan history and also really bad fan fiction. That, if you know where to look, is still on the internet. It's bad.
The internet never forgets.
It's true. Although, if anybody has a contact at CBS, I wouldn't mind writing a book about fan history. But that's another point. What do? I am a podcaster on Women at Warp on the Roddenberry Podcast Network, where we talk about Star Trek and feminism. That's me. And this is that guy. You're up, Darin.
I'm going to keep him down.
Oh, here comes a cat.
Hello. I am not a cat. My name is Darin Bush. I am a science fiction and fantasy author. I do a lot of short stories. The only thing that I have novelized is a D&D campaign that I ran about 30 years ago, but it hasn't been published for some reason. But also I do a lot of creating content and panels for conventions, including not just Dragon Con, but a lot of conventions in the Atlanta area. So I'm looking forward to seeing what percentage of this panel is Keith.
And
currently 1/8.
Yeah, right. Currently 1/8. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, Miss Alison Richards.
Hi. Yeah, I also have not written any novels. I've read a great deal of them, a lot of them with Keith's name on them. But I've written a lot of fan fiction, and I also write for 3ifbyspace.net, reviewing a lot of media and talking about whether, it's good or it's crap.
Sure. Well, I likewise, I wrote I have not written any novelizations. However, I did write a thing like 20 freaking years ago now. I think maybe 19 years. I don't remember. Called Lord of the Rings, the Novelization. And it went viral before there was no word for it. Because it went all over the place, and I got lots of fun hate mail. How dare you? The book already exists, and you can buy it. And
it was hilarious.
Amazing.
Yes, it was.
That was,
and of course, the punchline of that is that in the mid-1990s, there were, you might recall, movies called Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Both of which had movie novelizations. Performer by Fred Saberhagen, who writes excellent vampire novels, but is about the least Bram Stoker-ish vampire fiction writer in the world. And Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was novelized by Lenore Fleischer, who has written lots of novelizations over the years. Yes. And that probably one of my biggest issues with both those movies is that the possessive was not accurate. And the existence of those novelizations kind of proved it.
Yes.
So let's go around the horn and what do you guys have my favorite thing about novelizations is before the interwebs and DVDs, and when VHS tapes cost $80 or some other outrageous figure.
Or we didn't even have VHS.
Yeah, exactly. Getting the novelization was sort of like getting, in my mind, what would come to be called the director's cut. I always felt like I was getting a bonus. Like I was seeing the true story that didn't, all of it didn't get filmed. And of course I find out later, well, that's not exactly what novelizations are, but hey, I read them anyhow. So what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite novelization that you've read, or Gary?
Yeah, well, for me it was that, especially growing up as a kid with in a low-income family, shall we say, who didn't get to go to the movies. Getting that novelization for me was how I did get to see it. It's like I read the Aliens adaptation until it fell apart before I ever got a chance to see the movie on cable.
Aliens?
No, Aliens.
Oh.
I mean, that's how bad it was for me. I had read the novelization for Alien, but Aliens is the one I inhaled that book. I loved it. And one of the things I do like about novelization is you can play with certain things, because one thing that always stuck with me to this day is the scene where Hicks is going up to look through the ceiling where the aliens are crawling through the ductwork, and he ends the chapter right as he lifts it up. And so you get this, like, what's going to happen that you don't get in the movie, because, he just keeps moving and turns. So, yeah, it was a way, like Joe said, it's before VHS, before everything. It was a way to own the movie. And so that's why I just read every novelization I could get my hands on. And like some of my first early Star Trek love comes from reading the Alan Dean Foster adaptations of the series.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Of the animated series, yeah.
Yeah. Because those were good, especially to me as a kid.
The James Blish adaptations of the original series were my introduction to Star Trek fiction, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although my favorite movie novelization from before I became somebody who wrote them was Wanda McIntyre's novelization of The Search for Spock, which I still say is one of the 10 to 20 best Star Trek novels ever written of any kind.
Well, she was just good, period. I mean...
Oh, yeah. But there was... What especially got me... what struck me about that novelization, I read it before I saw the movie. And when I saw the movie, I was, first of all, hugely disappointed that the whole opening bit wasn't there, because there was all sorts of really cool stuff where, McIntyre actually remembered that there were other people in Star Trek 2 who died, who were mostly ignored in the actual Star Trek 3. And... Plus, of course, she didn't know that Savick had been recast, so she was writing Kirstie Alley as opposed to Curtis, which is only an improvement. And no offense to Ms. Curtis, who was a delightful person and actually a really good actor, but she was not as good as Savick as Alley was. But the thing that really got me was I'm reading the scene where the Enterprise has blown up, and they're down on the planet, and they're looking up, and I read Kirk saying the line, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" when he's looking up and watching the fireball go through the atmosphere. In my head, having been, this is 1984, so for, all my life at that point, I've been hearing William Shatner the crap out of things. So I'm picturing, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" And then I see the movie, and it's the most somnambulent line reading in William Shatner's entire fucking career, is him saying, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" It's like, dude, what the hell?
What are you doing?
It's so disappointed. So yeah, that was, and I love everything she added to the movie. She had the whole movie there, but everything she added made it better, more interesting, stronger. She actually came up with a reason why Uhura didn't go along on the trip, besides the fact that she, I don't know, would put cooties on the Enterprise or something, because God knows the movie didn't bother to explain it. And she gave a lot more detail to what, Scotty had to, bury his nephew. Sulu had to basically lose a command. All of them, she did a much better job of... and I love that. It's still one of my favorite novelizations, and that's sort of like the gold standard that I try to hit.
Michael?
I actually always go to the Batman novelization from 1989, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I didn't get to see it on opening night because I was traveling that day, but I could buy the novelization and take it with me and read it on the way down to Georgia, and it's to me, it was like
Craig Shaw Gardner.
That was Craig Shaw Gardner, author of the Cineverse Cycle, which is a fantastically funny series of novels. I cannot recommend them enough. But that book taught me two things that I had not realized by 13. One, they lie because there's this whole horse racing scene that is not in the movie that I kept expecting to see in the movie, and it wasn't in the movie, which I think was for the best. And two, that I didn't really put it in my head until that point, that novels play with time so differently than movies do. Because that first chapter, when he's going through Gotham, and it's like this slow, insidious, travel through teen prostitutes and corrupt cops, and these two guys mugging this family, and Batman not doing anything about it because it's not dramatic enough, I guess, for an introduction. But then I see the movie, and it's just like chop, chop, chop. We're just gonna get right to the Batman part. And I'm like, oh, and it made me realize that I kind of, on certain levels, liked the novel more for that. But no, it's a really it's an interesting novelization in that you can tell it's a later script. Because the Robin stuff that was planned is not in the book, but it still has all the horseplay, so to speak. And two, it's one of the few novels where the author actually got to visit the set before he wrote the book, or while he was writing the book. So it gave him a better sense of what everything looked like. Because usually these writers are like shoved, draft one or two of the script, and they have to bang it out to get it in time for the movie. So the fact that he actually got to see the set, I thought was kind of cool.
So,
John?
Yeah, John.
Well, you were talking about earlier about reading novelizations before the films came out. The one I always remember is I bought a copy of The Empire Strikes Back about 3 weeks before the film came out, and all of us were debating on whether or not it was true or not. But that also ties into one of the things that, the novelizations of Star Wars especially is one of the things that really influenced a lot of people, for better or for worse, thinking that they saw, there you go, Darin, thinking that they saw things that were never shown. I mean, people swearing up and down that they saw the Biggs Darklighter scenes in the theater. Nobody did. But because they read it in the novelization or they saw it in the storybook, they think that they did, and that always bothered me, people swearing up and down. Oh, and I remember this one kid in junior high school who swore up and down that his father had an unpublished copy of the Journal of the Wills.
Jeez. Sure he does.
Yeah, it's unpublished because he wrote it.
Well, he could never show it to us. It was something his grandfather had. It was published in the 70s. Since then.
He had some gold plates buried in the backyard too.
Yeah, I do remember the debate one time I was in high school in the 80s, and they were this just raging back and forth debate between these two people on whether or not Lucas actually had the Journal of the Wills, and they were a pulp book series that he had adapted. Like, no. Sue?
So, I guess fact about me, my favorite character is never the focus character of anything. So the thing I love about novelizations is that those side characters tend to get more attention. We see scenes that aren't in the movie. We get their thoughts. We learn what they're doing. And that is what has kept me reading some novelizations. The one that I have read the most would be Star Trek Generations. Yeah. The one that is my favorite is this one right here. Star Trek The Motion Picture. So incredibly bizarre.
Speaking of side characters, didn't Vonda McIntyre or somebody get in trouble for that? Or for like adding in characters that were in some of the spin-off fiction before Paramount came down and said you can't do that anymore? Didn't she add in a character from like one of the other books into her novelizations? Or
well, she did do that in Star Trek 2, but it didn't stop her from getting the next 2 novelization gigs. So
okay.
But I don't even mean those characters, but like when you're talking, next gen, I'll just use it because it's the true example. I care the most about Beverly Crusher, just like in life, in the world. I care the most about Beverly Crusher. And she has, I think, 8 lines in 4 next gen movies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I read the novelizations because they gave me more of that character. She's a main character on the show, but gets no attention in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the biggest problem with the next gen movies is they're the Picard and Data show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder. Sounds familiar. I don't have.
Spoiler, it can't be the Picard and Data show anymore.
Yeah, just you wait.
Yeah.
They'll figure something out.
Darin?
Yeah.
I've been collecting the novelizations of movies in various different forms for a while now. I have not just novelizations, but I also have storybooks, and obviously the Marvel super specials for things like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. The Raiders of the Lost Ark Marvel super special is just awesome. It's amazing, and I still got that.
Did the art for that.
Yep.
Yeah,
that sounds right. And so the one of the things I like about novelizations is, as a couple of people have already said, is you get a little bit deeper, longer view of a universe that you, on average, you get about 90 or 100 minutes, and then that's it. And the books have a lot more room to work. I think that also the novelizations of movies get into that kind of same realm as the video games they make from a movie or a TV show, where they just kind of paint the people onto a game engine and just sell it. It's like there's no heart or soul in it. Farscape. And so anytime you pick up a novelization, you're rolling the dice on how good it's going to be, even if it's written by somebody that in their own universe is an excellent. That's part of the fun of novelizations, I think, is I wonder if they can pull this off. No, they didn't pull it off, or something like that.
I think that, you talk about, one of the weirdest ones I saw was like Orson Scott Card did the novelization of The Abyss.
It's funny, John, that you bring that up, because I am willing to say in public I'm not a fan of Orson Scott Card personally, but I was really tempted to read an excerpt from The Abyss tonight, because it is literally the movie. It is the closest novelization that I'm aware of, because he was on set while they made the movie, had access to Cameron's Bible, and wrote it to match exactly. It is not an interpretation or an adaptation. It is exactly the story. So if you want to watch the movie The Abyss, read the book.
Is the novelization the extended cut or the theatrical cut?
Much extended. Because there's the excerpt that I would read from The Abyss if I was going to read is the one where the Navy SEAL lieutenant, whose name I have now forgotten, fell out of my head. There's this moment where, he's played by Hicks. Yes, beautiful acting job. There's this point in the book that is not even referred to in the movie at all, where he avenges a crime by hitting somebody over the head with a very large brick and killing them and getting away with it. And once you see that scene in the book, once you read that scene in the book, you go back and watch The Abyss again and you go, oh yeah, of course he acted like that.
Yeah, I remember reading a story at the time that they actually gave the actors some of the stuff Card had written with the character's background and history, so they could understand their character better.
That's funny, Gary, because I heard the opposite story, which is that Card had access to the actors while they were performing. That he was inside the actors' heads also, as well as Cameron's.
Which is a very rare thing. That most of the time, the only connection that the novelizer has with the studio is indirectly through their editor, who talks to somebody in licensing, who talks to somebody making the movie, and it can often be a game of telephone. And that level of cooperation is extremely rare. Usually when you're novelizing a film, you have what you are novelizing is whatever version of the script happened to be current when you sign the contract. If you're lucky, they will let you know when they do reshoots. My favorite stories and this particular thing hasn't happened to me, but has happened with other novelizations, is where the studio will call up the editor, and Greg Cox, who has done lots of these for tour books, has tons of these stories. The studio will call up the editor and say, we changed the ending. We need the novelization to reflect it. Okay, send us the script pages. Oh, we can't send you the script pages.
Keith, there was a question that came in the Facebook chat from Gary, who said, are the extra scenes and plot lines tacked on for page count, or are they cuts from the original script?
The answer to that question is yes. No, sometimes you don't always know what's going to get cut. You're working from, like I said, the script they give you. It's usually the shooting script. A lot of times, like there were a bunch of scenes for example, in Serenity. I remember fans Browncoat's coming up to me and said, "Thank you so much for that scene with Inara." It's like, I'm glad you put that in there. I said, I didn't put that in there. That was in the script. They cut it later.
Oh yeah, and films are edited so late in the game these days. So a lot of times not even until weeks up until the release. So I mean, long after you've had any chance to even see a script.
But also, a movie does not have a novel's worth of story in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
At best, it has a novelette worth of story in it. You have to add stuff to it because if you don't, it's going to be a really thin book.
Sometimes that's a plus.
And a lot of the novels back in the 70s and 80s were pretty thin,
Yeah, but even then, you've got to add some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
and usually there's opportunities to do that. You can take, the unknown character, the unnamed character who gets killed to show what a horrible person the bad guy is, but you don't really know anything about them, and you can explain who they are. You can flesh them out and make that death actually mean something, which is something I've done a couple of times. Like in Serenity, for example, I added a scene. I added the attack on Haven, where Shepard Book was killed. I actually dramatized that because I thought it would have more poignancy if we actually got to see the attack and watch these people that we'd gotten to know get killed.
Yeah.
And I had the room to do that. The movie itself didn't have the storytelling space to do it because it's only, there's a limited amount of time. You've got more room in a novel, so you can do that. You can flesh things out. You can bridge scenes a little bit longer.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, that was my phone going crazy.
Oh,
I apologize.
Alexa wanted to interrupt you.
Yes.
Damn you, Alexa!
All right, so Allison, we didn't get your answer.
Well, for me, I'm a big fan of character and seeing character development and how the character sees a world and story. So the one thing I love about novelizations is being able to see that thought process that you don't really get to see on screen as a character's going through the scene. Characters have to do so much with their body language to kind of get their emotions and their ideas across. But in the novelization, you're able to really see what they're thinking and what's motivating them. And that's the thing that drives me the most for why I read them.
Allison.
I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, as for the one I've read the most and the one I love, the one I've read the most, hilariously, I've been reading novelizations since they were junior novelizations.
Oh.
And I have read this one probably every other year since it came out, when the movie came out. I also used this as source material for a history report on the real Newsboy strike of 1899. So
you and Michael Bailey just became best friends.
I didn't know that existed, and now I need to own it.
Yeah. It's just like now I didn't know it existed. Now it's all I ever want in life. Oh, good Lord! The movie. By the way, in 1993, I was watching with a bunch of my theater friends, and I'm like, that guy would make a good Batman, and everyone told me I was wrong.
No way.
And I know.
Batman.
And here's the weird thing. I know the date. I can tell you the exact date it happened because it was the day Lois and Clark premiered. So it's like one of those things where, but everyone was just like, no, he would make a terrible Batman, and half the internet would agree with them. But no, this was that's the thing where I got at my reunion. I looked at everyone and said, I was right. And they were like, that's what you're going to brag about?
Oh, man.
But speaking of Batman, my favorite one is actually, this is going to be one you guys can tell me if you count it as novelization or not, is Batman Nightfall.
Yes!
Which is the novelization, not of a movie, but of the comic series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disney's done a bunch
brilliant.
of those. They did Nightfall. They did The Death of Superman.
Yeah.
They did 52. They did Infinite Crisis.
And Greg Cox deserves an award for doing a novelization of Countdown and Final Crisis that made sense.
Yes, this is why we love Greg.
I like Greg too. Yes,
Which were then
Bethany's clapping in the background in the other room.
Yes. Greg's also the one who hired me to do this, which has pretty much got my career started. So
No.
But no, I only had seen the Batman the animated series up until I found this at a discount bookstore.
Yeah.
And it made me fall in love with Robin and Nightwing so much more that I basically have started collection back here of like all my favorite character statues.
there were novelizations of Batman the animated series too. Gary Gravel did those.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking
Yes,
of Greg
I actually have like one or two of them, but I didn't know if they were novelizations or tie-ins, so I didn't put them on my desk.
No, the Gary Gravel books were adaptations of the episodes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And in a true Inception moment, the Greg Cox novelizations of like Final Crisis and Infinite Crisis were then adapted by graphic audio.
Yes.
So there's an adaptation of the adaptation.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've been trying to find the adaptation, the audio one of this, so I can listen to it. It's like impossible to find.
Message me after this.
Oh, okay.
We got the hookup.
I told you. Now Michael Bailey is your best friend.
Michael Bailey's not my best friend.
You know, if you come right down to it, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a novelization.
True.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of a radio program.
Well,
Yeah.
The infinitely better radio program. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think the Hitchhikers deserves to be heard more than it needs to be read. You know.
Yes.
Well, Hitchhikers is almost the trope namer for what we're talking about, which is Douglas Adams changed the story every time he did the story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Famously changed the
He would
story
get bored.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
So I brought.
Yeah, but they all
I also
started
brought
with
something
the
else.
Earth being destroyed, and then they went off in different directions each time.
Yeah.
But you've got to
I
start
also
with the
brought
Earth being destroyed. That's the only part.
I also brought another one of my Does It Count books with me, and I don't know if you guys know the story about this Dances with Wolves novelization. Well,
Lay
what
it
it
out.
was is they wrote the book to basically be a source to create a screenplay.
Like
So,
the 2000,
Oh wow. Okay.
2001 was done the same way. I mean, Clark
Wow.
and Peter sort of wrote the story of the movie and the novel at the same time.
yeah, but it's like one of those. Does it count as a novelization if they're writing it to be the movie, even though
All
the
right.
book comes out first?
Keith,
How the hell should I?
you're our designated judge on this.
Which comes first, the novelization or the movie?
It's in the same category as 2001, which it was created more or less simultaneously with the movie. So it's kind of this weird chicken and egg, which came first thing that's really hard to judge. I don't know.
Has anybody read I'm desperate to find this, and I just haven't. Now this panel reminds me, the Jack Kirby comic book version of 2001. I must
Yeah.
read
I've
it.
seen it.
I've
Okay.
seen it.
I hear that the story that I read about that was they didn't really have anything. They just kind of gave Jack Kirby the paragraph that the movie was about, and he said, okay. And then Machine Man is in it. There's robots. There's stuff blowing up, and
they continued it after the movie. They continued the story.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
and then the flip of that was DC wanted to do Planet of the Apes, and they're like, no, we're doing it somewhere else. So they're like, okay, Jack, create something. So he created Commandy in that whole world.
So,
Gary, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would like to ask the panel, for you, what makes a good novelization? What is a good novelization got to do, as opposed to just being just it's there?
Well, I think it needs to work as its own thing. I mean, granted, people are going to buy it because it's a tie-in, but it can't just be a tie-in. It just can't be a piece of marketing.
Because you can sell the script and people would buy that.
And
they do that.
Yeah, and novelizations have to be a different thing.
The thing that I try to do when I'm writing one of these is to try to focus on the things that prose can do that the screen can't, which is internal point of view. There's a real opportunity to dig inside the heads of the characters, because that's the one thing that prose is unique in. It's the only storytelling medium where you can easily get inside the characters' heads. And I think the best novelizations are the ones that lean into that. You can do action scenes also in a movie novelization, but half the time you don't know what it's going to look like because all you have is a script where it says the action scene goes here. But you can really dig into the characters more, and I think that's the best. Even really terrible novelizations like the motion picture one that Gene Roddenberry word vomited does a wonderful job of getting inside of her head.
I would also
your
question, Keith. When you and Alice, when y'all talk about adding things, the internal monologue. Have you ever had the original scriptwriter or the actors tell you, "No, that's not what I had in mind," but oh well?
Maybe. Not that I can think of, but
okay.
And if I did, my attitude would be, "Hey, the check cleared. Leave me alone."
Look, that money's in the bank, kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that if it's an established property, if the author is able to sneak in like references to that property that aren't in the movie, I always like that. Like Peter David's novelization of the first Spider-Man film has him talking about Peter's collection of Captain America comics. And it's like one of those things where it's a one-off thing, but it makes you like believe you are in that world. Like, okay, so this isn't just like Spider-Man existing in and of itself. This is the Marvel Universe, kids, and Peter Parker read Captain America comics. Deal with it. So I think that anytime they can do that, it makes the novelization better for me because it doesn't add or subtract from the movie, but it adds to the book.
I think that's also something that books can do, that they're not bound by the distribution agreements that they have, because at the time, a Spider-Man film couldn't show or even reference Captain America. They couldn't reference the larger universe.
I think that's also true when you've got an established property, that had a series or a series of movies before this one, that when they are dealing with the internal monologue, the internal thoughts of the character, that they get that character's voice right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true also of, tie-in novels, media tie-in novels. But I think you get a different crop of people reading movie novelizations who might not dip into those tie-ins as much. And I think for established properties, I think that's very key.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges of writing a novelization, if it's not something already established, is getting the voices right, because you don't always know who's playing them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or you might know who it is, but it may be an actor you're not familiar with. Like with Serenity, it was easy because I had 14 hours of Firefly to backstop me. With Resident Evil, I had nothing. I knew what Milla Jovovich sounded like, but it was still.
Mm-hmm. There's something else also that's going on with novelizations that I think it's worth mentioning. Novelizations are one of the foster parents of DVD commentaries, for reasons that we've talked about, which is that there's the novel has the ability to go not just into the mind, but also a little bit deeper into the details that like a cinematographer can't spend 10 minutes explaining. They show it and then you move on. I'm thinking of like something like the novel for Pan's Labyrinth is something I should probably get my hands on, because maybe it would explain some things. The specific example I'm also thinking of here is, and this isn't from a movie, it's from a TV show. There's this moment where the internet fans lost their minds because Picard said something and all the fans went, "That's not right." And what they missed was that he was lying. And in the novelization of that episode, there would have been none of that. There would have been no confusion about the fact that the nerds lost their minds because they misinterpreted how good a liar Picard is. Yes, what he said is factually incorrect. He's lying.
So, hey, you guys want to read some novelizations?
Sure.
All right, John, I believe you called dibs before when we even brought up this panel for the first time.
Okay, if you want to start with me.
Yeah.
The one I had bought this one originally because I had discovered Ellis Wiener, because he had done a novel called Dune, Doon, National Lampoon's Dune, which was about the Freedmen men and all. I mean, it's great if you can find it, track it down. It's hilarious. But he did the novelization of Howard the Duck, which reads like he was channeling Douglas Adams. I mean, at various points it goes off. He does these alternate in-depth coverage inserts describing things in Duck World or somebody's costume or one of the companies in there. But the opening of this, he actually manages to. I just have to read it just because, Howard starts with that insane narration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he makes it work in book form. And the universe, a boiling chaos of matter and energy where billions and billions. Hold it. Boiling chaos? Billions and billions? The bill of fare announces Howard the Duck, and you're playing Carl Sagan? Who let you on this page? Who is this? Who are you? I am the voice of the greater cosmological context. Oh, you mean God? Well, not to be immodest, but I am the voice that speaks on behalf of the infinite. The voice that says, for the ages, that which cannot be said. And do you? It is I, whose pear-shaped tones encompass galaxies. I, who invoked the extremities of cosmic boundlessness. Omniscient I it is who ushers puny stupid you into the awesome domain of eternity. Be nice. Listen and learn the destiny of worlds. Hear and grasp the ultimate acts of creation and destruction. Attend and admire the voice that launched 1,000 identical documentaries about Orville and Wilbur, Goddard and von Braun, Sputnik and Schmutnik, and the miracle of flight. Are you the guy that says things like, ever since he first gazed in wonder towards the heavens, man has yet learned to fly? Yes, it is I who says such stuff like that. I thought you sounded familiar. I am more than familiar. I am ubiquitous. Innumerable are the second-rate science fiction stories told in voices aping mine. Uncountable the science fiction movies introed or outroed by facsimiles of me. No astronomy show on television gets aired without I saying so. Which brings us at last to Howard the Duck. I am that voice. That voice that mirrored, that voice of voices, of which Rod Serling and William Shatner and that guy on the Outer Limits are but feeble imitations. All right, I'm convinced you're God. You flatter me, but very well. Let it be so. I am God. Fine, but I'm the narrator, so shut up and let's get started. Howard, a duck on a world of ducks, got home from work one afternoon, beat the universe. A boiling chaos of matter and energy, where billions and billions of stars rage and cease. Now he threw his briefcase on the couch and trooped off into the kitchen for a beer. The place was a disaster. Unwashed dishes in the sink, yesterday's leftover Le Canard gourmet frozen vegetable medley in a light cream sauce still in the pot, a half-empty bag of Mallard Mars on the table. Howard from Ducklinghood, hectored by his mother to be neat, had never been a slob ever since leaving his nest. He barely noticed the mess. Unstoppable time, flowing through this half-empty bag of electro. Hang on, I'll start again. And it keeps going like that, with the narrator jumping in and out, fighting the voiceover guy, and just it's a fun read.
And that sequence has more of Steve Gerber and Val Mayerick in it than anything in the damn movie.
I was about to say that is so much more of those comics than the movie ever.
I wish that had been the intro to the film. I mean, kind of like George of the Jungle. It was so much fun having people argue with the narrator.
George of the Jungle is a wonderful film, but that's another panel.
Yeah, it's another panel.
Jabba.
Who's next?
Darin.
Yeah. Darin.
Oh, I wanted to go last.
Nope.
Okay. No. Okay.
All right, so I have a. Oh, am I allowed to pick to go last? I don't know.
No.
All right. Well,
Just humored you.
Dibs.
As my contract says, Joe's always right. So I wanted to show the camera here. I've got my stack of Star Wars novelizations here, and so I want Gary and Joe to have a chance to stop me before I do it. But I wanted my excerpt to be from the Shakespearean Empire Strikes Back version,
Yes.
If you guys allow that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
For parody, but
So I was gonna
It's
read.
totally a novelization. Shut up.
Okay, excellent. I was gonna read the stormtroopers.
Abomination.
I was gonna read the bit where they humanize stormtroopers in this book, but nah, it's wrong panel. Wrong panel.
No.
Okay, couple of
Not that
pages.
panel.
Review for that.
Me. So
It's always
I
about
don't
you.
know. I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. You might recognize this part. Enter Darth Vader. They duel, and Luke is forced to the edge of a deep cavern. This is the end for thee, Skywalker. See, thou art defended now. Resistance would be futile. Let yourself not be destroyed as Obi-Wan did, weak old man he was. They duel. Darth Vader cuts off Luke's right hand with his lightsaber. O horror, O vast pain exceeding words. Thou shalt find no escape. Do not make me destroy thee. Great importance shalt thou have within the Empire's power, and thine own shall only grow with time. I prithee, join with me, and I your training shall complete. When our strength is combined, we shall conclude this bitter conflict and bring order to the galaxy entire. I never shall join with thee. I would rather be destroyed. The boy doth admirably keep his head, but now I shall unleash the final blow. If thou but knewest all the power of the dark side, Obi-Wan hath never told thee of what happened to thy father, Luke. Oh, he hath spoken much, and he hath told me of the truth, that thou didst slay him, aye, and without cause or mercy, murderer, most vile and wretched. No, I am thy father. Nay, 'tis not true. It is impossible. Pray, search thy feelings, Luke. Thou knowest it is true. Nay! Luke, thou mayest the Emperor destroy. He hath foreseen what thou wouldst do. It is thy destiny. Come join with me. Together we shall rule the galaxy as son and father. Come now, Luke. It is the only way. The dark side is thy path. Oh, join with me, and we shall be as one. Luke looks down and drops into the cavern.
And scene.
My favorite things in those Shakespearean adaptations are the asides, and my favorite asides are the ones from R2 because he's one snotty ass son of a bitch.
Yes.
Yes, and I think if you have any theater geek in you at all, I got upstaged by a cat. Speaking of theater,
Sorry, she was
We are
pestering
always
me.
upstaged.
if you have any theater geek in you at all, you absolutely have got to get these Shakespearean adaptations of the Star Wars books. I think my favorite part of all of them together is that when he was writing this, he knew the author's name is Ian Dosher, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Dosher knew that he was going to have to do something weird with Yoda because Yoda speaks like he's in a Shakespeare play normally. So he changed Yoda's dialogue to haiku.
Ooh.
All right. Allison or Sue, who wants to go next?
Well, I feel like I'm going to be the weird one because I chose a dramatic piece.
All right, go ahead.
I obviously was not planning for the room. But so my book is actually the novelization of the pilot episode of Earth 2.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
They actually came out with 3 books, 2 tie-ins, and then this one, which is the novelization. And God, for the love of me, even though I can't handle his politics, I love Antonio Sabato Jr. His face is pretty. So that's what got me into the show, and I love Alonzo, and so I'm going to read the scene where Alonzo actually starts being able to communicate with the Terrans. The man who never dreamed was dreaming again. Alonzo stood atop the white mesa, dust blowing all around him. The area beyond was utterly featureless. His clothing fluttered in the wind, the breath of it warm and dry against his face, smelling of dirt. His legs were whole beneath him, strong and lean, and supporting his weight without trouble or trauma or the need of anything remotely like splints or crutches. A low, dull rumble sounded all around him, edging up on his hearing in a way that let him know it was probably going to be going on for quite some time. Then he noticed it, starting low, where he couldn't perceive it as more as a vibration against some innate sensitive nerve, and slowly growing into the audible ranges. He looked around in confusion as it grew louder and louder, increasing in urgency. The soles of his boots began to tremble. Suddenly he knew the sound was coming from the ground directly beneath him and rising to the surface. Some sixth sense warned him in time. He lunged out of the way as a massive creature erupted from the ground right where he had been standing a moment before. It pushed up out of the earth with a graceful, explosive force, like a tree trunk thrusting itself skyward, showering him with rocks and chunks of dark dirt that smelled like the wind. Alonzo shielded his head from the falling detritus and peered through the gloom to get a better look, which he instantly regretted. A scream shredded his throat as the creature stared down at him from its imposing 7-foot height, out of a face like dried seamed leather. What the hell? Any tiny reserve of bravery within him shattered. Alonzo turned to run and managed one step before two more of the creatures burst from the ground directly in front of him, making him backstep fast. Hands out, they spoke to him, their speech a patchwork of broken bird-like notes and odd, echoey phrases. What are you? Alonzo shook his head, not understanding. All he wanted was to get out of here. He clapped his hands to his ears in a useful effort to shut out the sounds. Almost in tears, he was unable to go forward and afraid to turn back. What do you want? He screamed. Their broken tones were his only reply. He turned, spinning desperately, seeking escape, and suddenly found himself surrounded as more and more of them erupted from the ground, materializing out of the earth with a silent, fluid facility that made his skin crawl with revulsion. A string of broken notes and echoed calls went on, intensifying, overlapping one another, and convoluting like mating snakes. Among the piping notes and unearthly thrills, Alonzo thought he caught the snatch of familiar words. Or was his ears just playing tricks? The hell? His eyes darted in the direction of the words, steering clear of the leathery faces and slitting eyes staring down at him. What was that? Who said that? Behind him came another voice. Or was it the same voice? What the hell? Completely bewildered, he spun around, searching faces he'd rather never have seen. Another of the creatures spoke, and then another. Not creatures, came the knowledge from somewhere, springing uninhibited into his mind. There was a word for animals, for the koba and their ilk. Terran was the word he wanted, the ancient word for these people, the unfamiliar word that meant them all. The word popped into existence and took up permanent, solid residence in his skull. What are you? What do you want? Alonzo turned and turned, dizzy with movement and exhausted from fear, searching, chasing what he thought were English words, human words, coming out of inhuman throats. The Terrans drew closer, moving in on him without any sense of movement, shifting like the sand, their eyes implacable. What is this place? Alonzo cried, the question becoming a searing moan. He crumbled to his knees. Please stop! Who are you? He bent forward and wrapped his arms around his head. No! He screamed, desperate to block out the sound of their voices, even if it was his voice and only his voice. Please leave me! Something touched him. It was a light caress, a hand, but a human hand, not one of the Terran's crusty, leathery appendages. Alonzo reached for it frantically, grabbed it as if it was his final lifeline, and let it draw him back, away from the Terrans, and back into the real world. He was on the ground beneath his hammock, curled in a fetal position and crying for all he was worth. His legs hammered with pain from the fall he had taken, but he welcomed it like a long-lost lover. It let him know he was still here in the camp with the others. Alive. Pain made it easier to escape from the dream, and to put it at bay and cut off its clawing, reaching arms like the Terrans. Julia knelt beside him, stroking the hair back from his sweaty forehead and murmuring soft, soothing nonsense words. He glanced at her, still shaking with fear, and she bent to gather him in her arms. He let her, needing the feel of another human being as he had never needed it before, needing the warmth of arms around him, the soothing motion of rocking, the sound of her quiet voice in his ear. It took him a few moments to register the distant fire, with the others gathered around, the moons overhead, the huddled shape of the other sleepers, wisps of dream images shuddered through his memory. shambling like walking corpses. I don't have dreams, he muttered softly to himself, a statement of plaintive pride with deceit. Don't have dreams. But that clearly wasn't the case anymore. Carved in stone truth had ceased to exist, and Alonzo Salas didn't know what to believe anymore. There you go.
Wow.
Cool.
Sorry, like I say, it was, I felt dramatic, but that's why I like a lot of these books, is because you get to see the characters and what they're feeling and thinking. And that was like the best scene I have of all my books that really express it.
As soon as you got to the part where it said welcoming like a long lost lover, I thought, well, why? Why are we doing this on Earth 2? That's
all right. Michael Bailey, follow that.
Novelization, Allison?
Huh?
Who was the author of the novelization?
Melissa Crandall.
It was Melissa. Okay.
oh,
Melissa
All right,
was
Michael Bailey,
one
follow
third of
that.
the original LA Graph and then broke off. LA Graph was originally Melissa, Julia Ecklar, and Karen Rose Chacon. LA Graph stood for Let's All Get Rich and Famous. And then Melissa broke off on her own, and most of the remaining LA Graph books were just Julia and Karen Rose. Anyway.
All right, cool. Bailey, follow that.
Okay. From the sublime to the ridiculous is but a step.
Yes.
So I like Superman. It's a big secret. I'm just revealing.
We had
it now.
no idea.
Yeah, it's just a thing. And I could have chosen several Superman novelizations to read from, except for the first two movies because Mario Puzo wanted to get paid, and I chose no. I'm going to throw everyone a curveball because when I found out this book existed, it was everything I wanted in life. In 1997, they did a movie based on Steel. And they wrote a book by Dean Wesley Smith, whose name I see on a lot of novelizations. But based on the screenplay by Kenneth Johnson, based on the characters created by Louise Simonson and John Bogdanove. If you've never seen this movie and read the comics, it baffled you. If you've never read the comics and seen this movie, please, for the love of God, read the comics. There is a Shaq follows me, by the way, not on Twitter, which would be cool, but we have a giant Shaq standee at work that they moved to receiving. So every time I go back there now, he scares the crap out of me. And it's just him holding a printer, so it's even more creepy. I want him to look like this, but he never does. But this is from reading from the Book of Steel. This is chapter 20. The old VA hospital smelled very much like a nursing home. Antiseptic covering death. One smell layered in over the other for years and years, so thick it choked everyone who walked through the door. And John Henry was no exception. The old hospital's tile floors and cracked plaster walls had long given up the fight of looking clean. The faded diamond pattern on the tile floor had worn completely off in two long traffic pattern lines, like lanes of a freeway viewed from the air. The maplewood trim around the doors and the floor was scarred by 1,000 bumps over the 60 years the place had existed. Even the very design of the place made it feel old and out of date. High ceilings and small narrow doors with transoms. Huge round white lights hung from metal rods from the ceiling at even spaces down the hall. Only about half the lights worked. The smell bit into John Henry's nose and made his stomach twist. He couldn't believe that Sparks had been in this place over the last few months. She deserved so much better, and he was going to make sure she got it. He moved into the recreation room. An old box television was in one corner, tuned to a soap opera. A one-armed vet played ping pong with another man in a white cloth uniform, obviously one of the orderlies. Sparks was sitting by herself on the far side of the room. She faced a smudged window that looked out over the lawn and trees around the back side of the building. Man, I thought my tax dollars went to keep these windows clean, John Henry said. No response at all from her. She just kept staring out the window. How you doing, Sparky? He stuck out his finger, pointing it at her, waiting for their ritual greeting. Again, she didn't answer or moved. She looked like a zombie, dressed in a white robe with food stains down the front. Her cheeks were sunken. Her hair looked dirty and unkempt. It was clear to John Henry that his friend's fire was almost gone. Where once had been bright eyes and a smile, there was a tight, dark mask of bitterness and self-pity. He kneeled down beside her. Why'd you stop writing me back? He asked. Didn't you get my letters? She turned slowly and looked at him. I got them, she said, her voice low and without energy. And this wheelchair you ordered? Thanks. She went to turn to look back out the window, but he grabbed the arm of her chair and spun her to face him. This all must be hard on you, he said, looking into her sunken eyes. I can imagine how you feel. She half snorted at him. I don't think so. John Henry nodded. You're right, he said. I don't, and I wish I could turn the clock back. Sometimes you don't get the choice, Sparks said. Shit happens. Yeah, John Henry said, sitting back away from her. I know. A good cop friend of mine just got hurt bad with one of our weapons. He took a deep breath and then went on. Sparky, they're in the streets. The guns we built are in the hands of kids. It seemed to take a moment for what John Henry had to get through the shell she'd put up around her, but then it did. And for the first time since he'd got there, a spark of light returned to her eyes. She looked up at him, a puzzled frown on her face. On the street? He nodded. But how's that possible? That's what I'm trying to find out, he said. I could sure use your help. Sparks patted her useless legs. Yeah, right. I'd be a big help on the streets. What are you going to do, John Henry said. Just sit here and stare out that dirty window forever? Sparks' jaw jerked as if he'd slapped her. She turned away. He could tell he'd hit her hard with that comment, but sometimes it took a good solid punch to get someone's attention. Right now, his best friend needed help, and he was going to give it to her, even if she hadn't asked for it. He stood, moved over to the window. It had been painted shut years before. He took a good long grasp of the sill and then shoved. With a tearing sound, the window smashed upward, rattling in its old frame. He stepped back as a warm breeze blew Sparks' hair back off her face. She stared out the open window and tears dripped down her cheeks. I can't, she said slowly, not looking away from the window and the fresh air beyond. You know the truth, Johnny? I just want to die. Now the tears were really flowing. John Henry took a deep breath of the fresh air, pushing back the smell of death and age in the old building. You're talking crazy. Let's get out of here. He moved around behind her and started to push her wheelchair towards the door. What are you doing? She demanded. No! With a quick motion, she clamped on the chair's brakes. John Henry just laughed. You think that's going to stop me? You forget who I am. He reached down and picked her up, chair and all, as effortlessly as if he was carrying a baby's car seat. Iron, she shouted. Stop it. I don't want to go. John Henry laughed again. Sorry, Sparks. Sometimes you don't get a choice about things. There's a prime example of this here's a prime example of shit happening. He carried her out the door of the rec room and down the hall as the vets in the big room cheered and clapped.
You know, that scene was a lot creepier in the novelization than it was in the film.
Yeah, I'm like a few nips and trims here. This is a stranger danger chapter.
Yeah.
So
actually, you're up.
One of our one of our viewers just posted this, and I gotta show it. There's a Kazam novelization.
That was me. I found it.
Okay, because
your friend.
Yeah, we'll have to do another round of
kids novelization published by Scholastic, but yeah.
All right, lay it on us, Sue. What you got?
I have, as I have shown before, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the novelization. This novel, this piece of work is unfiltered, no producers, no editors, Gene Roddenberry. Yeah. When you see the trolls on Twitter talking about Gene's vision, this is Gene's vision. Okay? Just remember that.
People forget next People forget Next Gen got good when
he
they
had
fired
very
Gene
little to
Roddenberry.
do with much of Star Trek past about season 2 of the original series. And as time went on, they kept pushing him out the door. So it's especially fun for me when I see people hating on the new stuff who literally have in their bios a fan of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek 1966 to 2005. Like, okay, sure. But
Do you even
in
Star
honor
Trek Bro?
of the man whose 99th birthday would have been yesterday,
Yes.
I'm going to read an excerpt from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the novel. In this bit here, a little bit of explanation. This is where, in the early days of Star Trek fandom, the creators were very much involved. They read the fanzines, they contributed to the fanzines, and they were very much aware of fan fiction. But Gene wasn't so thrilled that there was a lot of Kirk Spock fan fiction. And this is seen as his attempt to sort of tamp down that part of the fandom.
No.
That always works
So
Yeah.
happy.
Oh dear God.
Let's say
I was
it
hoping you were
backfired.
going to read this part, so I really like.
Let's just say it backfired. All right, here we go. Until this very morning, Spock had been certain that he had finally and fully exercised his human half and its shameful emotional legacies. An hour before the rising of the Vulcan suns, Spock had made his way to the high promontory he had chosen as his own, and there he had greeted the red dawn of this important day with mind-cleansing meditation. He had known that today he would face Psi herself, and that the High Master would invite him to enter with her into mind meld so that she might place around his neck the old symbol which proclaimed his mastery of Kolinar. That was one sentence, you guys. Sorry. In searching his consciousness this morning, Spock had been especially alert for any trace of pride in his accomplishments here in Gol. What was. He had done only what he had meant to do and had the good fortune to be able to do. With this thought, Spock had looked up at the red dawn sky in the direction where he knew Sol and Earth to be, and had begun a respectful but brief farewell to his mother's planet and the part of his life that it had represented. He had long ago decided that he would neither return to that place nor move among its people ever again. Jim, goodbye, my Tahila. I don't know, it's a Vulcan. This is the last time I will permit myself to think of you or even your name again. Footnote.
But footnote is in the text?
This.
No.
Oh, there are footnotes all over this thing.
There's tons of
God.
footnotes. Footnote. The human concept of friend is most nearly duplicated in Vulcan thought by the term Tahila, which can also mean brother and lover. Not done. Spock's recollection, from which this chapter has drawn, is that it was the most difficult moment for him, since he did indeed consider Kirk to have become his brother. However, because Tahila can be used to mean lover, and since Kirk's and Spock's friendship was unusually close, this had led to some speculation over whether they had actually indeed become lovers. At our request, Admiral Kirk supplied the following comment on this subject. I was never aware of this lover's rumor, although I have been told that Spock encountered it several times. Apparently, he had always dismissed it with his characteristic lifting of his right eyebrow, which usually connoted some combination of surprise, disbelief, and or annoyance. As for myself, although I have no moral or other objections to physical love in any of its many earthly, alien, and mixed forms, I have always found my best gratification in that creature, woman. Also, I would dislike being thought of as so foolish that I would select a love partner who came into sexual heat only once every 7 years.
Oh,
So there is an urban legend that has grown up among fandom thinking that Alan Dean Foster really wrote the motion picture novelization, mixing it up with the Star Wars novelization, which is credited to George Lucas, but which Alan Dean Foster actually wrote. This confusion is exacerbated by the fact that Foster wrote the original storyline that the motion picture was based off of, so there's a lot of confusion there. And I don't see how anybody who's actually read this novel, of which Sue's excerpt is but one tiny bit, and it's all like that. Just write like that on his worst day.
Look, you guys, this is literally on page 6.
Oh my God.
That is how bizarre this book is. It's all like this.
Yeah. It is very
That is the reaction I was going for.
Yes.
It's
Also,
the
I'm
actual
sorry
part
that my
that's really
Shatner
important.
is so bad.
It's
This
so
is not the
written
way.
by somebody who's never written a novel before.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, so John's shipping his dolls in the background was a little distracting, but also, Sue, I read that book when I was a
That
teenager.
explains so much, Darin.
Yeah.
No. I have suppressed.
I have to go
A
do
lot
a
of
copy
it.
out again because I don't remember any of that.
I don't remember any of that. I think
There is going to be a spike in sales of this book on Amazon, and they're going to go, "What the? Why?"
I put out a new edition of it last year because it was the 30th anniversary.
Yeah, here's the thing, though.
man.
I don't know, and I couldn't find out if they changed any of the text for the re-release.
Oh dear God. Oh, I hope not. That would spoil it.
So just to be safe, if you do go looking for this, buy an old copy from the 70s.
Yeah, they're super cheap on eBay for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, not for long.
Not for long.
Welcome.
We're about to drive the price up, baby.
I seriously doubt they changed anything, but
All right, Keith, take us home.
oh, is that where? Okay.
Well, now, Gary, did you have something?
No, I can't.
Well,
No.
There's
So
Besides,
I can't possibly follow what you just did, but I'm
Yeah, I
certainly
thought
not
following
gonna
Allison was
funny
up,
because
so.
I couldn't possibly. I'm going to go with a bit from Serenity. It's a bit that I'm particularly proud of, and it's one that it demonstrates what I was talking about earlier about getting inside the characters' heads. This is if you remember the movie, they have just retrofitted Serenity to look like a Reaver ship so they could get through Reaver space and get to Miranda.
Mhm.
And so they're this is in the movie they're flying through Reaver space and hoping the Reavers will leave them alone. So this is a chapter. Everybody was on the bridge of Serenity. Nobody spoke a word. Wash piloted the ship through the dead space that Reavers tended to dwell in. He flew the ship hard and fast. Any sign of caution would give away their disguise. Wash was never nervous when he flew, but he was nervous now. Not because he doubted his own skills, but because he had some notion of what would happen should they be discovered. Zoe stood at her man's back, a comforting hand on his shoulder, wishing him all the strength she had so that they would get through this in one piece. Zoe didn't much fancy feeling helpless, but right now all she could do was stand and watch while her husband did all the work. She had done what she could, swallowing bile the whole while to make up Serenity like it belonged around these parts. And now it was up to Wash. Jane was never much for praying, though he did believe in God, and that he himself was going straight to hell. That didn't matter none to him. Way he figured all the fun folk to be with was going to be there with him. What he did give some caring to was the manner in which he arrived, and he didn't want it to be because of no Reavers. So he prayed. Kaylee winced every time she heard Serenity's engine whine, or burn too loud, or do whatever such thing as it might do when it was broke. It was bad enough when she sounded like that on her own because of, say, the captain not letting Kaylee replace the entry couplings, but to know that she did it purposeful was like tearing out her own heart. She just hoped this was worth it, was all. Inara thought she had put all this behind her when she left Serenity. She'd seen so much death since coming on board, and she had thought that part of her life would be closed when she disembarked. Yet how could she deny the thrill she felt, the joy at being back with these people? After all, she thought, if I wanted safe, I would have remained on Sinon in the first place. Simon thought about all the bodies back on Haven, and the others the crew learned of soon thereafter. Some were places he knew, others ones that they hadn't visited in the 8 months since Simon came on board, but they were still people who died because of him. True, it was that man who beat up the captain who did it, but it was Simon's own actions that started the chain of events that led to those people's deaths. A lifetime ago on Osiris, Mother had asked him if he was going to throw away everything he'd worked for his whole life. He'd been prepared for that, and had deemed rescuing River from those who would experiment on her, operate on her, torture her, to be worth it. But was it worth all the other lives? Was River's life worth Shepherd books? He had no answer. Mal stared straight ahead into the black. Ain't nobody here but us Reavers, he thought emphatically at the 90-odd broken and violated ships that littered this little piece of the black. He needed to get to Miranda, find out what it was that led a man to kill preachers and children and crooks alike. The Alliance had always been about control, and Mal had always been against it. But this was extreme even for them. And now Mal's life literally depended on his finding out why. River knew all these things. And she knew something else. Nobody wanted to give her up. Not even Jane anymore. He still didn't want her on the ship, but Jane wouldn't give River up to someone who would do what the Alliance operative did. Even he had standards, such as they were. And that made River happy. Despite what Captain Reynolds may have said, Serenity was home, even all gussied up like Reavercraft, and Serenity would keep her safe. Minutes later, they were past the Reaver Armada, having gone through the gauntlet unmolested. Minutes after that, they arrived at Miranda.
It's good.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you, sir.
That was mighty shiny, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, my gosh, you guys. Another epic length quarantine panel.
I didn't even get to tell all the stories I wanted to tell.
Oh, well,
that's why you
should
should turn in for Chapter 2, Dragon Con Weekend.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Before Sue started her amazing, I was gonna jump in with okay. I had like 2 I was gonna do. I'm gonna save them, but I couldn't possibly do better than Steel. But I was gonna attempt to do Superman 3.
Gotswinkle.
Yeah. My favorite author's name, William Kotzwinkle.
Oh, yeah, the guy that did the E.T. novelization.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. You guys thought the Steel novelization was creepy.
We're gonna do a lot more Kotzwinkling in the next installment of our novelization readings. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
Can I tell one story real quick?
Sure.
Okay. I was thinking of reading something from Gargantua, the also an Adam Baldwin vehicle that I novelized. The problem is the 2 best lines from the script I refused to put into the novelization because they were that bad.
Which
one was a seismologist who asks Adam Baldwin's character, who is a marine biologist, "I'd love to know what the marine biological implications are of all this seismology." He meant seismic activity. We'll leave that alone. Yeah. The best line, though, is, okay, Gargantua is about a nuclear family of giant lizards. You have the papa lizard, the 40-foot tall papa lizard, the 30-foot tall mama lizard, the 9-foot tall surly teenage lizard, and the cute little itty-bitty baby lizard that eats cheese puffs and bonds with the main character's kid. I swear I am not making this up. And So they've captured the surly 9-foot teenage lizard, thinking that's all they have to deal with. They've got it captured in a cage, and Adam Baldwin's character, who you will recall is a marine biologist, is staring at him, and the line of dialogue in the script is, "It's an amphibian, but it also can live on land." One of the great disappointments of my life was when Gargantua actually aired on the Fox network in 1998, and that line was not there, because between when it was written and when Adam Baldwin spoke the line, somebody looked up the word amphibian, and therefore the line in the movie is just something actually vaguely scientifically accurate, which was very disappointing. It had my name on it. I mean, I just, so.
That's great. Well, guys, we got to do this again very soon. We will do this again very soon.
Yes. DragonCon weekend.
Yeah, co-director, Mr. Gary Mitchel, where can people find you if you wish to be found?
They can find me traipsing through the dreams of William Shatner's sex therapist.
Love instructor.
Love instructor. And on the Twitters as at Gary Mitchel. And every week on Mondays, I post a article called Slip Discs, letting you know what geeky, nerdy media is coming out that week for you to purchase, because I still believe in physical media.
Love instructor.
Love instructor.
Mr. John Hudgens.
You can find me on Twitter at John Hudgens, or you can find me at Z-Team Productions. You can find my films Backyard Blockbusters and American Scary on Amazon Prime, or at backyardblockbusters.net or americanscary.com.
Cool. Sue?
If you want to hear me talk about Star Trek some more, and why wouldn't you, the best place to go is womenatwarp.com and go from there.
So if you look up Darin M. Bush on Amazon, I have an author's page there with some print anthologies I'm published in and some short stories that are available for the Kindle.
And Alison?
I'm available right here on Twitter, and I'm back writing for 3ifbyspace.net if you want to hear me reviewing stuff.
Michael Bailey.
You can find me at fortressofbaileytude.com, which is the home of what I laughingly call the Fortress of Baileytude podcasting network. One of the shows I do is called From Crisis to Crisis, where we are about halfway through covering the post-crisis adventures of Superman, which include, where's the book? That would have been better. Steel. So we're going to do a commentary. It's gonna be great.
God.
Oh, God.
Keith.
You can find me online at my incredibly primitive website at DeCandido.net. It's my last name there, .net. It links to my Facebook page, my blog, my Twitter feed, my Instagram account, my Wikipedia page. I write regularly about pop culture for Tor.com. If you search me on Amazon, you'll get a ridiculously large number of listings. My Supernatural books will probably come up first because they always do. I've written a ton of Star Trek novels, Supernatural novels, Farscape
Articles
stuff.
of the Federation.
Articles of the Federation, yes. I've
Leverage.
and other things. Feel free to cyber stalk me. I'm all over Facebook and Twitter constantly. I
was trying to reach one and pimp it for you, but I can't.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
What, 5 over here? Just one?
The
And the
Klingon
one
Art
that
of War.
I was reading along with.
There it is.
Plus,
And,
I have 2 more of these to get to mail to you.
Yes.
yeah. So I'm at Yojo Crowe on the things, and if you're watching us live, you're already here at facebook.com/group/American Sci-Fi Classics. If you're not watching us live, join us on that Facebook thing that I just said. And we'll put words and links up to things that you can go to. And if you want to be our love instructor, please come and do that there.
And Keith will have written the novelization of this panel by next Tuesday.
And in 14 days, come back here for the start of Dragon Con with our first Dragon Con panel Thursday night. And
Thank you, guys.
Come back next week when we will be talking The Hunt for Red October.
Ooh.
That's right. Guys, thank you very, very much for spending a little time with us or a lot of time with us. You made the right call.
Yes.
Your family and your work are terrible. Spend time with us instead. And thank you guys very, very much. We will see you very soon.